invested in all those instruments are reflected in these fund balances. Like if you have $1 million of, short-term leave CD fund, like that number shows up. That number is part of this. It's part of this, right? But the one for Team Trust is not part of this number, is it?
It's just not broken.
Okay. Okay. So you, I think you followed my, so I'm going to ask you questions. I think you followed what I'm asking. So is the right number for me, is the right number for your 21,122,129? Or the right number 22,000,000? So what I'm hearing you guys say now is that there's no Lincoln Trust included here. So you did what I wanted, what I'm asking.
Hey. Hi. This side? Alrighty, it is 4 o'clock, it is May 17th, it is the year 2022. We are the Carmel-by-the-Sea City Council. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Special meeting. Yashin, could I get a roll call, please?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Councilmember Byrne.
Here.
Councilmember Ferlito.
Here.
Councilmember Tice.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards.
Here.
And Mayor Potter.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. Next order is Pledge of Allegiance. Chip, would you lead us in the pledge this time?
Yes, sir. Hand over heart. Ready to begin?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, our first order of business is public appearances. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to speak on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anybody wishing to do so? If so, please step forward, state your name for the record. 3-minute limitation on that testimony. Anybody in the house wishing to speak tonight? I don't see anybody in the Zoom world wishing to speak. I don't see anybody. All righty, well then we'll move on to the order of business, which we have one item, and that is to receive a presentation on fiscal year 2022-2023 recommended budget and provide direction. Chip, would you like to introduce this before I kick it over to Robin?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you and welcome to our budget study session. This is Councilmember Ferlito's first budget study session in person. Welcome, Councilmember Ferlito. Thanks to Robin and Russell and Anna and Yvette and Ashley and Leslie and Max and Brandon and the department heads and council for your vigilance, accepting the presentation just a couple weeks ago. And thank you to everyone who drafted questions. Hopefully we've answered them. If not, please, there's ample opportunity and time for us to continue to field and answer your questions. We're going to receive the presentation in two parts, Mr. Mayor. Russell will present revenues, and then Robin Miscatini will present the expenditures. I was reading last night, I do read things besides what you send me, and I was reading and there was a quote by Dr. Chopra, and one of his quote was, "All great changes are preceded by chaos," and it made me think that, the chaos of the pandemic has dictated our approach to dealing with it, and we have a robust yet conservative balanced budget as a result, and I'm very happy to report that. This budget is oriented toward fiscal sustainability, and just as a quick reminder of some of the things that you have done in the recent past to maintain our fiscal sustainability. Things like the passage of Measure C, the establishment of a Section 115 pension liability trust, the refinance of our lease obligation bond for Sunset Center, increasing our general fund reserves to 15% last year. But as usual, our work is not done. It's never done, quite frankly, in local government. And so I'll remind you of the hot hand fallacy. There's no guarantee that what is happening in our local economy will continue. There's no guarantee that the structural surplus that we are currently enjoying will remain without our vigilance. So we have built for you a budget that conservatively recognizes growth in revenue, but does not anticipate the leisure market continuing at the same fever pitch if the nation moves into a recessionary posture. So I thank you, all of you, Council, for your dedication to this very important topic. We're anticipating a budget adoption hearing on the 7th of June, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and if not, we'll just move right on to Russell.
Any questions or Chip by council members at this time? All righty, well then we'll move on to the meat of the evening, the afternoon.
Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. It's a pleasure to present to you tonight. Coming off of the May 3rd 22-23 budget delivery, staff is very pleased to make this presentation tonight and go through this workshop with you. I will begin with an overview of revenues, and then Robin will follow up with expenditure side of the equation. She'll dig a bit deeper into the expenditures of each department and expenditures in general. Robin will also cover questions received since May 3rd, and department heads are available tonight also to answer any questions that you may have regarding their operational budgets. And a question and answer period will follow after our joint presentations. Municipal finance is cash flow based, and cities are nonprofit organizations that really focus on the delivery of services. As such, our expenditure plans, which you'll hear about tonight in length, really start with the question, where do our dollars and where do our monies come from? So the objectives of my presentation tonight is really to discuss the overall city revenues and answer the question, where do those dollars come from? Look at overall revenue trends, focus on the major revenues streams that the city has, and also talk about how we projected revenues going forward into 22-23. The 22-23 budget reports $30.26 million in revenue. This is a 6.5% increase over the 21-22 amended budget. Clearly, in the current year, in 21-22, the city has done well and will end the year in good form financially and from a revenue standpoint. The city has three main revenue sources: property tax, sales tax, and hotel tax, or transient occupancy tax, or TOT as we abbreviate it. Considering that sales tax now includes the voter-approved local measure C of 1.5%, I think it's more accurate to say that we have four core revenue sources. And that would be property tax at 27% of total revenues. That would be the statewide sales tax, the traditional sales tax at 11%. Measure C now accounts for 19% of the city revenues, and hotel 22%. So if you add these all together, what you come up with is nearly 80% of all city revenues in these four particular sources. That's $24 million out of $30 million. So hence, my presentation tonight will focus specifically on those large dollars that really determine how we fund our services. If we look at historical trends over time, two things stand out to me, in particular when I looked at the finances of the city. First, the city has experienced steady growth for years. That's very clear. There's a 10-year chart here, and it displays that. Secondly, the last 3 years have been like no other. I've been in municipal finance now for about 26 years, and of course I've been through recessionary periods, but COVID has been unlike any other economic period that I've ever seen. In many ways, the revenue story can be summed up as a tale of lines, lines that I'm going to display on this chart here. If you look at the red lines, that reveals the impact of COVID, showing over $2.5 million in lost revenue in 1920, with only property tax remaining steady. COVID was clearly a shock to the system. The green lines track the recovery, with sales tax being restored in about a 12 to 18-month period. Actually, by the end of 2021, we got back to an even par. Hotel tax has been another story. It's taken another additional year to recover. The dotted line shows you hotel tax finally reaching its 18-19 levels, and it has reached those levels in this particular year, the year that we are in. So these are unparalleled trends that give us both comfort, as Chip indicated, that we've come through this and we've made the right decisions. But at the same time, it gives us reasons to pause as we look forward. As I get into the major revenues, I'll talk about them each a bit. Property tax has increased an average of 7% over the past 4 years, and it's really been led by double-digit growth. In 2021, there was approximately a 10% growth, and in 2022, we project the same, about a 10% growth in property tax. I think everyone would say when COVID emerged, that's a bit of a surprise to see to see that type of development as well during these times. As we look into 22-23, we have moderated our expectations. We are estimating about a 3.2% growth over the amended budget. And we do this because we believe trends will normalize, but there's also a very important reason. We're concerned about the dampening impact of increasing mortgage rates. In March of 22, Fortune magazine reported that Fannie Mae has predicted a softening in the real estate market to about 4.2% nationwide in 2023 versus an 11% projection in the prior year. In the end result, this budget projects an increase in stability in property tax and generally an increase of $670,000 over the prior year, but we are remaining tempered as we project the next year relative compared to this year. If we look at Bradley Byrne's sales tax, the general statewide sales tax, we have seen an increase in that revenue stream of 7.5% over the past 4 years. But this tax, as well as Measure C, has undergone a roller coaster ride of change. We saw large drops and spikes due to COVID. Revenues dropped 19% in 1920, followed by a 40% surge in 21. We anticipate 6% growth in the current year. And for 22-23, we essentially are projecting a leveling with current year estimates. So we're staying level with what we have received this year. Yet still, that represents an 8% increase over the former amended budget. Measure C sales tax increased by 22% over the past 4 years. A revenue source that's also seen the impact of COVID. But most significantly, it's experienced healthy gains with the passage of the 2020 Measure C 1.5% voter approval initiative. That was the right action at the right time. And the timing was perfect in that we did not expect what happened with the pandemic, but it really came through for the city. For 22-23, we also project a leveling of this estimates and have kept our estimates flat with the current year, even though we are 22% above last year's numbers. Hotel tax is increased a modest 4.5% over the past 4 years. So it's been slower to recover. And it is now getting back to 18-19 levels. It's been a hard 2 years for this revenue stream, with recovering taking much longer than sales tax. It dropped 26% in 1920, followed by just a modest increase in 2021 of 4%. This year has been strong. As reported at mid-year, we expect nearly a 30% increase in this revenue stream this particular year. The 22-23 budget reflects stability, but there's also an overarching concern that possibly in the past year, what we've seen happen with tourism may be a bit of an anomaly given pent-up demand. And we stay cognizant of the fact that there may be alternative destinations for individuals if COVID is to pass on and people feel more comfortable traveling elsewhere. We believe hotels tax will stay strong and stable, but at the same time, we've conservatively paced it at a 2% growth over the amended budget and actually trimmed it about 4% from the current year estimates. I'll pass this slide because I spoke to the Fortune magazine predictions, but this slide basically indicates that there's a change in the winds as far as the economy is concerned. Various entities have reported essentially the possibility of a recession in future months, and at the same time, a dampening of the housing market in particular. And I cite Fortune, I cite the Bureau of Economics Analysis, and also CoreLogic and the Mortgage Bankers Association. So our subdued revenue estimates can best be described by noting several economic warning lights facing us. First of all, the Bureau of Economic Analysis reports that GDP decreased at an annual rate of 1.4% in the first quarter, in contrast to nearly a 7% increase in the prior quarter. The domestic price index increased to 7.8% in quarter one. Just last week, that number was revised to 8.3%. The Conference Board expects continued commodity price strains as we look forward. CNBC reports that the U.S. Fed Reserve has raised their rates by 0.5%, and that's the biggest change in about 2 decades. And the New York Times reported recently that the supply chain pressures will remain, they believe, for a year or more. So that's my discussion of our main revenue sources. Let's see if this slide is working. It may not be. Okay, there we go. There are other revenues in the budget. There's charges for services that make up $2.18 million. This is 7% of the budget. You may remember on May 3rd, I presented the user fees, and this has everything to do with user fees. There are no significant changes in this area, and we expect these revenues to increase essentially by CPI and to continue to recover costs for these services. If we look beyond 22-23, we can expect, though, in future years that this will be adjusted again at a much higher CPI rate as we look into 23-24. If we look at the other revenues categories, that makes up about $4.15 million, and that's 14% of the budget. The components of this revenue stream are grants, franchise fees, state motor vehicle license fees, and business license fees. If we compare this to the prior year budget, what you'll see are there's about $447,000 in new grants this year that are specifically fund planning projects and some particular CIP projects. Otherwise, there's no other significant changes in this area. As we look at CIP and planning grants in particular, though, they must be evaluated on an annual basis, and we can't assume that they will reoccur. So every year, those dollars will be reevaluated and brought back to the table. So in conclusion, we will end fiscal year 21-22 in good form fiscally. We're projecting about a $2 million mark above the amended budget revenue estimates. Clearly, given my statements, we remain diligent and cautious as our services now become fully actuated. And by that I mean that we have restored staffing and we're in catch-up mode in terms of capital. And we watch closely as the marketplace adjusts to the new past-pandemic normal. What that normal is remains to be seen. Is this year's strength in sales and hotel tax a reactive surge? Is it Are these altered travel plans permanent? We're not sure. Will trends continue unabated as an indication of permanently modified habits? We await for the conclusion to that question. But fiscally, as you can see, from a revenue standpoint, which also impacts the expenditure plan, we're not weighing too heavily on either extreme. We're essentially staying right in the middle in terms of our revenue forecasts. So with that, I will pass this on to Robin, who will now speak to expenditures.
Thank you, well done.
Thank you so much. Hello, Mayor, members of council. So obviously I'm going to address the expenditure side of our budget.
Robin, I'm sorry, I'm having a little hard time already hearing you.
Okay. So I'm going to be addressing the expenditure side of the budget, as Russell indicated. So thank you for your time this afternoon. And as always, thank you to everybody for their input. So what we're looking at, Russell, of course, just addressed the revenue. I'm going to address the expenditures. We have a couple of our standard pages for the fund balance charts. And then we'll open it up for discussion to receive direction for any changes from your council. And then we're back on June 7th to adopt the budget. At that meeting, we will provide an updated budget book that will include any revisions that come from council direction. We will update the Q&A, the question and answers. There is a question and answer document attached to today's packet, and those were questions received up through last Thursday, May 12th. We will update it for any questions received up through this Friday, May 18th. So, yes, so with that, the next few slides there's nothing new on them. We presented them at the June 3rd meeting. This is really more for the benefit of maybe members of the public who are just now having an opportunity to join in on the city's budget process. So again, just the high level, $30.3 in recommended revenue, the $32.4 in recommended expenditures, 2.1 in capital use of fund balance, I'm sorry, and mainly that is to address all of the deferred capital improvement projects, and we're going to recommend 96.23 FTEs. Again, same slide, it just breaks it down into the expenditure types, and as usual, salary and benefits eats up the majority of the budget at 42%. Same slide, we break it down into the individual departments, and with the police department and public works being at the highest percentages, and our capital improvement projects. Now this is where I'm going to start getting into digging deeper into the budget. This is a 10-year history of the FTEs that the city has funded with, you can tell, pretty kind of moderate and flat, flat to FTE level. And then our hit, of course, due to COVID. We recovered this year. We brought on 94.23 FTEs were approved for this current fiscal year. And we're recommending 2 additional ones for the upcoming fiscal year. One of them is just a restoration. That is the last remaining administrative coordinator position that was laid off and has yet to be restored. So we would like to have that restored. This will serve full-time in the Public Works lobby and get that lobby and front counter fully opened. The next is going to be a brand new position called a Natural Resources Manager. It will also work in Public Works, and the Assistant City Administrator, Maxine Gula, will be bringing that job description to you at a future meeting. It is not currently a job description that we yet have, but Ms. Gula will be bringing that to you in the, like I said, a future meeting.
And if I may, that's our current working title, so Max is currently still working on that. But I just want to remind everyone that we're actually, with the two positions that the council approved last autumn for Public Works, we're an administrative technician and an administrative analyst. We are adding 4 positions to the Public Works Department to work in various aspects of the work that they do. So these are 2. The Natural Resources Manager position is, again, a work in progress. We'll bring that to you in July.
Thank you. This chart just shows how FTEs percentage-wise are broken down into our departments. Our police department has the majority of personnel at 27%, Public Works at 23%, and then the library and the administrative department across the hall at 13%. I promise I'm not playing favorites, but the city administrator has received multiple questions on staffing in the finance department. So I thought it might be helpful to see the proposed or the recommended change. So at the current fiscal year and many years prior, the staffing structure has been the Director of Budget and Contracts, supported by the Finance Manager and 2 finance specialists, as approved in the current year. With the changeover in the finance department, the recommended structure is to have the finance manager be the department lead, and with supporting positions of accountant, finance analyst, and finance specialist. And this was administration and finance department having a good opportunity with the changeover in personnel and vacancies to look at the needs of and working environment of the finance department and how better to serve and support the community and the departments. So we really feel that this new personnel structure is really going to, like I said, help out in all of those needs. The revised finance manager position job description was approved at the April 4th City Council meeting, as well as the finance analyst job description. The accountant position would be another brand new one, and again, at a future city council meeting, Ms. Gula would bring that to you. Are you chiming in?
Can I?
Yes, you can chime in.
Just again, council, the analyst position that you created in the administration department, you may recall that Ms. Friedrichsen, who previously held the position of Director of Budget and Contracts, who is now with the City of Berkeley doing budgeting, bless her heart, worked on some analytical projects as well, not just finance issues. She worked on Flanders Mansion. She dealt with at-home letter delivery. So we're stripping away those jobs responsibilities from finance, and they'll be housed with the analyst position. So that's the utility player. I apologize, Councilmember Ferlito. The utility player, the analyst, will be taking on those kinds of projects in the future. So again, finance with these 4 personnel that can really focus on budgeting, accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, dealing with the refinance issues that we've dealt with, some of the things I talked about earlier in my opening remarks. So thank you, Ms.
Yes.
Catini.
And specifically in the question and answer document, this is really the illustration to the answer on question number 5. Now I'm going to going into each department. I'm not going to bore you with going into the expense of every single dollar budgeted, but really pull out the main expenses that are budgeted in each department, or items that we know are of special interest to both your council and to the community. So with your council budget, you have your discretionary grants, and of course that was discussed thoroughly at the April 4th meeting, or April this month's meeting. We had a placeholder in there of $20,000. It will be increased to $24,000 per the May 3rd meeting, and that's very easy for us to accomplish there. The mail service, at-home mail service delivery, the $55,000 is budgeted for fiscal year 22-23. That is down from $81,000 budgeted in 21-22, and that is due to the restructuring of the program that came to pass this past summer. So it is having, it seems, the desired effect. For regional memberships, $47,000 is budgeted, and that's all the various, like I said, organizations that your various council members belong to. And it is detailed in the budget book on your city council page. So again, I won't bore you with all of that here, but the details are there. The second budget I'll discuss is the city attorney's budget. And there's a little bit of a change here. So you'll see there's 2 line items where we used to have 1. So we are budgeting for the general services of the city attorney's office at $360,000. And this restores it to the pre-pandemic level. The city attorney's office, just like many of our employees, our business partners, took a reduction in service cost through the pandemic. But now that we are seeing recovery, they're requesting to have that restored back to the pre-pandemic level. The city attorney's office also provides specialized services dealing with things like personnel, negotiations, and so $75,000 is budgeted to address those sort of services. And those are in the contract services line item. Yes, we've had those services before, and the addition of specialized services. In discussion with the city attorney, he made the suggestion or request that we create a separate line item to break out when outside special counsel is used. And we agree with that recommendation. This will really help everybody be able to tell specifically the cost of services provided only by the city attorney's office, and then as specialized and outside services are needed. So that's the difference there, and that's why I note that it's a new line item, but not really a new cost. For instance, some of those services would be the services used addressing the wireless communications. We are paying for some of those specialized attorney services this year, but they've been in the contract service line item. So going forward, we would like to separate them out. So that is the change there. The Office of the City Administration, that's the umbrella that covers administration, clerk, finance, IT, and HR. Majority of these line items, of course, are self-explanatory, but I thought I would just really go through contract services. And so for the City Administrator's Office, giving assurance that funds for the annual City Administrator's evaluation are budgeted. And the electronic signature system, as we know it, is DocuSign. City did bring on those services in the current fiscal year, and we would like to retain them, but they do, of course, charge a service fee for that. The city clerk's budget, they use the services of agenda management, meeting broadcast, so Novus and Granicus, as we're all using right now. And though it doesn't happen every year, the November 2022 city council elections, so those funds are budgeted. In our finance department, the user fee review, this again was addressed at the May 3rd city council meeting, where the user fees for the upcoming year were adopted, but letting you know that during this fiscal year 22-23, a specialist will be coming in and review all of them from the ground up. So the cost for those services is budgeted, as well as we use our sales tax consultant, HDL, and all of the bonds that the city has, there are compliance reporting requirements, and it is a specialty field, so we do budget to make sure that the city stays in compliance and having those all publicly reported. The HR department has third-party administrator for like benefit administration. So like our insurance, our medical insurance, staff that again is a field that's specialized and really beyond the knowledge and really the working level of staff. So we do have third-party administrators manage those for us, and that way it helps make sure that employees' benefits are managed and attended to timely and correctly. And our IT department, of course, they do specialty consultants as hard as they work. When they do large projects like transition amongst servers and data movement, they do ask for specialized consultants to assist them with that. The website, maintenance of the city's website is also budgeted there. And the city's website is 5 years old, so they have also requested that to have it refreshed, and we recommend that. So we've budgeted funds for that. In publications and subscriptions, you know, IT, again, with all the software licensing, it's budgeted in there. All of the software products the city uses, of course, we have to pay for. And the security, the threat monitoring, we all need that. So those services are covered. And the finance system, the software that we use to maintain all the finances of the city and payroll and business licenses and everything, we do pay, of course, a user fee on that for the year. Do want to pull out that we have a new line item labeled employee appreciation. Again, emphasizing this was a cost we've had, but we used to pay it in employee programs, and with conversation with city administration, the suggestion and recommendation to pull it out into its own line item, so we can really see and make sure that we have proper funding, and we're going to devote funds to do the holiday party, our spring barbecue, the Years of Service Awards, to really, again, support and thank our employees. So again, it's not a new expense, it's just going to be posted into a new line item. And the last is computer replacements, though our computers aren't as old as that. Our IT department was working hard to make sure that, just like with our CIP program, that we do not get too far behind and have computers that are more vulnerable to threats and are not working in any sort of efficient way. So keeping our computers updated benefits the city all the way around. Non-departmental, this is where we house our insurance cost. We do have claims deductible, just like with our home insurance policies. If there's a claim, the city, we have to pay a deductible, and then the insurance covers its portion. This is the budget line item where we cover the PERS unfunded liability. We also pay for our Section 115 trust and our retiree health care. And I'd like to add, I know that sometimes we've gotten questions, and I guess more of a misunderstanding that the city fully pays for retirees' health care. The city actually does not pay for dental and vision for retirees. The city does pay a small portion on medical insurance, and that's per the city's agreement with CalPERS. And right now, it's actually just like $152 a month, and it goes up on an average $3 to $4 every January. So I hope that helps any confusion. I know some members of our public have had the thought process that health is fully paid by the city for retirees, and it is not. The Forest Theater, with the new lease in there, we're also creating a new line item to track those utilities, because there are payment limits on behalf of the city and PACREP, sharing, and this again will help the city and PACREP be able to track the expenses. And our property tax assessments, that's another line item we get questions on. Hey, I didn't know the city paid property tax. We're not paying property tax in the sense that we pay like at our homes. It is the annual sewer charge and the water supply charge. So we are responsible for that, though we're not paying less than traditional property tax. And property tax collection to the Monterey County, they do charge a fee. Withhold, like I said, a fee for wonderfully collecting all the taxes for us. For the marketing, this is, well, of course, with our wonderful marketing partners. The Sunset Center, we have an agreement with them, a long-standing agreement, and it's at $750,000 a year. For Monterey MCCVB, the formula is 3% off of the budgeted TOT. So for this year, it's at $200,000. Visit Carmel. Their letter of request was in the packet for today, and they request restoration back to their pre-pandemic level. They, again, were a business partner that very wonderfully and kindly took a reduction through the heaviest of the pandemic. And so we would like to recommend that they are restored. And the chamber, we had a placeholder in the budget of $15,000, because at that point in time, they hadn't had an opportunity to reach out to the city with their request. So they reached out on May 3rd. Their request is for $60,500. Their letter's in the packet. And I know when it's open to the public, some of their membership is here or representatives, I should say, are here that would also like to have further discussion with your council. But to show their support history, that's why I have the 4 years there, to again show that they wonderfully took a reduction through the heaviest of the pandemic and are looking to have restoration. Our library, really the main cost for the library, of course, is staffing. The staff library director has requested simply to trade out. Traditionally, a lot of part-time positions supported and worked at the library. The job market has changed to the point that filling the part-time positions is really not practical. They're getting a lot more requests for full-time employment. So we do support that request to change. This is simply a trade out of FTEs. There's nothing new. This will also, like I said, help getting people, the hiring process there and the staffing to fully open the libraries. And as we heard recently, they've been able to increase their open hours, and the goal for the year is to get that fully open. Community activities. That's another one. Again, of course, it was had substantially reduced through the pandemic. They were able to move up some for the current year and put in a few of the community community activities, some of the holiday events in there. And they're requesting now to go fully restore the community activities, the community projects. And yeah, that one's pretty self-explanatory. Planning and building, they are budgeted mainly to do a lot of course, in their contract services, and have detailed out to show a lot of what they will be doing is grant funded. So they have affordable housing grants. Of course, they have the design guidelines project, and you heard that presentation again at the May 3rd meeting. The historic context update is also going to be grant funded, and they still need the use services for building plan review, that we do have staff on board to do that wonderfully. Sometimes, again, because of volume, and sometimes it does need to be utilize those services, and the fire system review for new projects also get external review. And they're also going to continue on with their scanning and digitizing project. And Brandon is here if you want to talk about that, but I understand they're having great success with that. They're also training and conference and professional memberships. This is one thing you'll see in the budgets. We're really supporting getting staff back out to training, attending conferences so they stay current on all the information in their fields. And they also have professional memberships that a lot of are required for backup for their jobs, and then also help them with the knowledge and all the knowledge that they need. Public Works, I know this slide gets crowded. I was trying not to make it too busy. Again, most of it's self-explanatory, but I thought I would hit some of the main things in there. For instance, their contract services, a project manager, a contracted project manager is budgeted. Of course, the city has been trying diligently to get one hired, and as we've discussed at CIP and at some of the strategic workshops, the flexibility to have a contracted one as needed. Things like the janitorial services, are covered in this budget. But one of the largest things in here is the tree-related services. So I know we get a lot of questions about making sure that funds are in there to support our forest. And right now there's $330,000 in there to support the forest. The forest management plan is in there, and landscaping and weed abatement, $145,000 to really help, again, maintain our natural environment here. Materials and supplies, the forestry division, streets and facilities management, of course, need all the materials to continue their daily operations. And fuel and maintenance, this is a department that, of course, their vehicles are going every day. So they, making sure we're budgeting accordingly to keep the vehicles running properly, and fuel, and as we all know, the price of fuel has skyrocketed, so we're budgeting accordingly. Our ambulance department, we still utilize, we have City of Monterey at this point in time for any coverages, any shortages that might be happening on the ambulance, and so we're budgeted for that. That's a long time expense, I should say. Billing for the ambulance services, we do have a third-party administrator that bills for that, and they do take a portion of the fee. And we also have, there are a regulatory and administrative oversight, for instance, for like the prescription medications, things like that. And of course, they need their medical supplies, their safety equipment. The department also, again, need to make sure they're fully covered with vehicle maintenance and with training. For our fire department, same sort of thing. We have our contract for the City of Monterey to provide our fire department services. They also provide some dispatch services, and the wildfire risk assessment plan is budgeted here. Again, making sure that we are fully covered to make sure we can keep our fire vehicles maintained and fueled up. Police department, they use a large amount of contract services to support their operations. I really kind of just pulled out the main ones here. They have to connect with the automated criminal justice system. They have a lot of technology that supports the existing, these are the existing security cameras, not anything new that's talked about in the future. So the ones that exist, the license plate recognition system they use. We use the beach patrol. Of course, they use contract for beach patrol as that season is coming upon us. And also when we utilize services from the county jail, we do pay for that. Safety equipment, of course, we're making sure that our law enforcement team is properly covered to have the safety equipment they need. But we've also made sure we include funds for our volunteer partnership with CERT to make sure, again, they have the uniforms and the supplies they need as they, again, wonderfully help out our community. Our debt service and our workers' comp. So the nice news is 2 of our bonds will be paid off in the coming fiscal year. So the countywide radio project will be paid off, as well as the taxable pension obligation bonds. So those will be paid off. And then the Sunset Center refunding lease bond was, that has just the interest payment in it. And just I put a notation on there, though, starting 22-23 is when it will return to having principal and interest payments. The workers' comp budget, we have contract services in there. One of the things we have put in there is to have a safety specialist come and help just with another set of eyes and with their expertise review the components of the city and to make sure, again, that we have everything in good order to keep our employees safe. The other supplies, what we have in there are our COVID-19 safety supplies. Those were previously included in the facilities, Public Works facilities budget. But again, we felt making the change to putting them in workers' comp because they're preventative to keep everybody safe. And also ergonomic equipment. Insurance claims paid. Again, because we've done well, we have had a reduction in workers' comp claims. So we do, of course, have 60,000 budgeted. We didn't want to go too low, but we're hoping, again, it continues to stay low. This is a repeat slide just from the meeting on the 3rd, so we really won't spend any time on that. And our fund balance slide. I've had questions that we did the 2 years. So this is for where we project to end for the current fiscal year. And the loveliness about this is when the budget was adopted, overall it was projected to use about $80,000 in fund balance. The year has gone well. We've managed well. Of course, the economy has recovered to the point that we're actually projecting to end extremely in the positive of 2.8.
So everybody understands what Robin's saying there. So again, we were projecting a deficit balance, not knowing how the end of the fiscal year was going to look when we adopted the budget. We budgeted conservatively, and of course the revenues have come in much more robustly than we expected. So again, we are estimating, this is the unaudited ending year balance. This is our estimate at $2.8 million.
Right, thank you. And then this is the summary for the fiscal year 22-23, showing that we do plan to use $2.1 million. And as we keep saying, it's towards the deferred capital improvement projects. Basically, what these charts do is take all of the hundreds of line items that are in our finance system and try to compress them down into 2 charts that we hope are readable and manageable for your council and the public.
So again, Council, on that last slide, Robin, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
What this is reflecting again is we're not going to run a deficit balance. This is just saying that, again, we are going to tap into our fund balance, our savings account, by a little over $2 million for the capital work that you approved back on May 3rd. So we will still be structurally balanced at the end of next fiscal year. Next year at this time, we're estimating that will still be structurally balanced.
And so that covers the expenses. So now it's out to your council's discussion. And like I said, the public and Russell and I and representatives and department heads are here to help however we can.
Robin, thank you as always for your presentation, most edifying.
Oh.
I think before I open up for discussion, I'd like to hear from the public to see if there's any public comments at this time about the budget. So if anybody would like to come forward, any room here, please, now would be the time. Any item is open for discussion. There is a 3-minute limitation on the testimony, though. If you'd state your name for the record, I'd appreciate it. Anybody in the house here would like to speak? Do come forward.
Good afternoon, Mayor Potter and City Council members. My name's Jody Hansen. I'm the interim President and CEO of the Carmel Chamber of Commerce, and I wanted to just reiterate a couple of things. We're having our 100-year anniversary this year. Originally, the Carmel Business Association that became the Carmel Chamber of Commerce, and we're looking at this fund aid for our visitor center, the Carmel Visitor Center, and it is really important to us that we provide this service to the community. And at this point, we would like to be restored to our former levels. And we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Nice to see you again. Is anybody else in the house before I open up to Zoom World?
Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. I'm Amy Herzog, Executive Director for Visit Carmel. And on behalf of Visit Carmel, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to continue to let us manage the destination marketing program in partnership with the city. As you're aware, we have been partners in this capacity for several years now, And the Visit Carmel board has asked you to consider restoring funding back to the pre-COVID-19 level of investment. We're incredibly proud of the work we've done, especially in these last couple of very challenging years. And there's no doubt that we've been made more effective by having the insights from City Administrator Rierig on our Visit Carmel board, as well as the additional perspective from Councilwoman Tice, who serves in an advisory capacity. As you know, we're funded mostly by assessment dollars, and with those dollars, we are able to create a very robust and strategic marketing campaign on behalf of the destination. And that is integrated across all sorts of marketing tactics, from paid advertising to public relations, social media, our website, printed pieces, brochures, maps, even the banners you have down Ocean Avenue. But it's really the city's investment, their contribution, that helps us round out that marketing program, where we're able to celebrate and promote the retailers, the art galleries, the wine tasting rooms, the spas and salons, performing arts, and even the special events that we have in the city. All of that receives promotion and attention from Visit Carmel. The recent marketing campaign that we just released last month, where we promote Carmel, where every day is a work of art, is really indicative of that integrated approach. And it not only is it an homage to the artistic history of the village, but it's also talking about how a perfect day in Carmel can be a work of art, from the masterpiece in your glass to the art of the plate, to our natural beauty and to the experience that you have here. It's all a form of art. In the next fiscal year, you've probably heard a couple times mentioned, we are embarking on a much more expansive destination stewardship communications plan. And while we've always been very thoughtful in our marketing and even put out lots of responsible visitation messaging, that's always been a tenet of our organization. But this is really a step toward prioritizing that and putting it in the forefront, and making not just a short-term commitment to the customized needs of what our village needs right now, but it's really about the long-term vision and commitment to the destination. It's going to entail working with other organizations in the broader tourism community, as well as within the village, to get this done. And it's not just about protecting our natural resources. It's about shoring up our cultural assets. It's about quality of life. It's considering benefits for the community, and it's even safeguarding the visitor experience for the future. So, I look forward to sharing more with you about that another time, but just want to make the point that never has destination marketing and destination stewardship been as interconnected as it is right now. Visit Carmel is aware of that. We're prioritizing it. We know the community values it.
And your time is up.
Okay. Thank you again for your consideration. Thanks.
Thank you for your testimony. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. My name is Rob O'Keefe. I am the President and CEO of the Monterey County Convention and Visitors Bureau, and I appreciate an opportunity to make a few comments. I actually want to do two things. I want to express some appreciation, and I want to make a commitment. First, on a professional level, I appreciate the investment that you've made on our greater marketing program, because I think it's very important for all of us to band together. Monterey County is much greater than the sum of its parts. And Carmel-by-the-Sea is one of the crown jewels in our tourism offering. And professionally speaking, that we're working together as close as we are, and we're working more closely than ever, is absolutely critical to driving the revenue that was just talked about. I also appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the stewardship committee that Amy just talked about. MCCVB and Visit Carmel are working closer than we've ever worked in the past, and it's important that we do that. I also appreciate that Amy has considered coming onto our board next year, and to have her on our board binds us together in ways that we've never been before. So I'm looking forward to that. On a personal note of appreciation, since this July, it'll be 2 years that I've been living in this community, and I appreciate how you curate, how you are stewards of the quality of life in this. Tourism drives not just dollars, it drives quality of life. The ultimate beneficiary of tourism are the residents who live here. And we focus, and especially more in the future, are going to focus on that quality of life. and making sure it stays at the high level it is. I'm in the village all the time. I live up off of Santa Rita. I love living here. I get it. I've gotten it for over a couple years, and I got it before then too. So that turns me over to my commitment. I made a commitment to our board, and I'm making a commitment to our community for us to come back better. We went through this thing together, and it forced us to innovate in ways that we never had before. It took levels of collaboration to heights that they've never been before. And I'm committed to using that collaboration to making a better way of how we do business. And the stewardship plan that Amy talked about is part of it. And also, we're kicking off and launching this fall a 5-year strategic plan. And I'll just very quickly say, when I was at the 75th anniversary of Hoffa's House last week, and listening to Councilmember Tice talk about what it took those 75 years ago to get going, and the things they were uncertain about, and some of the tribulations that they had to get over, I think of our 5-year plan. I think about the next 75 years. I think about what we're going to look like and feel like and be like in the next 75 years. For me, the next 75 years start with the next 5 years, and a real focused effort to get us out of this pandemic and off to a new, better start. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else in this building wishing to speak today? I don't see anybody. I'll open it up to Zoom world. Dale Byrne seems to be present. Dale, did you wish to speak?
I do, Mayor Potter. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'd like to start off by saying the relationship that Carmel Cares as a volunteer-based city support group is developing with the city is a work in process, and that's healthy. Through good communication, hard work, and producing excellent results together, we've developed a highly productive and enjoyable relationship with city leadership, staff, and especially the Public Works Department. Given that, I have a few questions and comments related to this year's budget. First, what kind of process has taken place regarding future plans for Vista Lobos buildings? Overall, this parking lot and building is a very valuable piece of property at this point and could be worth over $30 million. And I think it's important that we carefully consider the options before investing in and dedicating it to a permanent function. I volunteered to pay for the Scout House design several years ago, but the city still budgeted $80,000, half of which has since been used on a new roof. I recently located a gratis consultant to do the design for the Scout House and turned that work in process and relationship over to the Boy Scouts, as well as the Mission Trail Bridge project. If the proper process has taken place to have Vista Lobos become a new satellite public works facility, perhaps we could find another designer architect to perform the $25,000 Vista Lobos design on a volunteer basis so that money could be used on something more valuable. A significant portion of the city's budget is spent on contracts that have been approved by previous councils, some beginning in 1954. This includes CalPERS, Sunset Center, and Visit Carmel. Added together, this is a huge number. In addition, some of these receive additional funds, including Sunset Center receiving $250,000 this year in the CIP. Somehow our Carmel Chamber wasn't able to get a similar deal, and given their perilous financial situation, is in a position to get their, is now trying to get their fair share without this type of agreement. I totally support this request, having worked with the Chamber as a volunteer and providing them with significant funding through the Carmel Gives projects in 20 and 21, which will not be continuing. I think it's always important to remember why this town and all of us are here caring so deeply for this special place. It's because of our spectacular beach and our roots as an artistic art enclave. Somehow over the last 100 years, no one presented a contract to the council to guarantee funding for the city's most valuable assets. And because of this, it always seems to be the first to get cut. We are hopefully finally going to fix Scenic Pathways irrigation system that uses the city's free non-potable water source, but not before almost all the plants died. The pathway has languished for many years despite the city doing an extensive hall study years ago, budgeting a measurable amount, then cutting it to zero. Other parks have been treated similarly. Why do we commit to a concert hall, internet advertising to draw tourists, and guarantee pensions to employees, but ignore the most valuable assets we have? Seems they might deserve a guaranteed contract as well. One concern of mine is that we do a lot of studies historically and many times, but nothing is acted on as a result. And this is especially true of Scenic Pathway and the beach. Another $150,000 is budgeted this year for the coastal engineering report, and it might be a valuable thing to do. But what level of visibility does ADA and safety issues related to the Scenic Pathway as were related to the Grady report have to the City Council in this budget process?
Dale,
I know that Carmel,
I'd appreciate it.
Pardon?
If you'd summarize, I'd appreciate it. Your 3 minutes.
Okay, all right. The closeout is not sustainable for Carmel Cares to be viewed purely as an additional budget source, although it could be over time that some projects are funded and completed above and beyond the budgeted items once the public is convinced that our partnership is truly accretive to all concerned. This must be a true partnership in order for us to collectively elicit significant public support necessary to start checking off some significant and visible improvements to our public spaces. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dale. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else wishing to speak today? I don't see anybody. Is that it for public testimony today? I'll say yes. All right, I'll close the public comment period, bring it back to council. Staff, Chip, did you have some questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I'd like to do, Mr. Byrne asked some questions about the Vista Lobos plans, about process vis-a-vis our obligations under state law for bidding and the like, and then the scenic irrigation. So I'd like to add all of those for a response for your June agenda. We'll get you an answer before then. The city attorney is working on a response regarding our obligations under state law, and I'm sure we've got answers regarding the Vista Lobos plans and the scenic irrigation work. Again, if it's okay with you, I'll answer those and get you an answer in writing, and certainly Mr. Byrne as well. And then just by way of the chamber, again, I've been actively involved with Ms. Lomas is here, who's the president of the Carmel Chamber of Commerce. I've been active, as you know, on trying to recruit for a new executive director and president, and thank you, Ms. Hanson, for joining us. It's because the chamber's been in transition for the last couple of months that I think we got the letter request for funding a little bit later than we would typically. Again, we got it on the 3rd, so we got it on the day that you received the budget. That said, we did book tentatively $15,000. If the council is keen on doubling that amount to $30,000, that's something we can certainly get behind, and we can find that money. Again, that's reflective of the historic, I think part of the historic funding that we've done. By way of history, when Ms. McMurdo came here, it was her desire, again, as president and CEO of the chamber, to slowly to work to, I don't have a better term, to wean the chamber off of city funding. And so again, that's why we had been budgeting less than we had in years past. That said, we certainly support the relationship, and we can certainly get behind $30,000 to help with the efforts at the visitor center, if that pleases the council. And again, I think that's a start, and then again, we can continue to work with the chamber on future budget years. So I think that concludes the questions that I heard directly, Mr. Mayor, but I'm happy to answer anything for you at this point in time as well.
All right, thank you, Chip, for that clarification. I did just review the expenses to date by the city attorney. You're all right. He's spending some time looking at what are our obligations, under the law as far as contract goes. I'd hope he'd be as creative as possible when it does come to the issues that Mr. Byrne just mentioned. It does seem to me that there's two ways to interpret the law: the strictest interpretation, and maybe some creativity would help too. So I don't want to be redundant. I've said this before, but
Yes, sir.
All righty, bring it back to council for comments. Would you like to go ahead and address the requests that are before us today first? One is from the chamber, the other one is from the Visit Carmel group to augment. I'd be supportive of those requests myself personally.
Yeah, I'll start it with that. Yeah, because I definitely think what the chamber did during the pandemic was invaluable. They were at every meeting. They were informing us constantly with new information, and so I think they were a true star during that time. They really helped us out a lot. So I'm in full support of what you suggested, Chip, or if somebody wants to make another suggestion, I would be open to that. If we want to take them one by one, or would you like to go all three, Mayor?
Council, other comments or questions? Jeff?
So the Visit Carmel ask is what's reflected in the budget, is that right? So what's in the staff report, the $120,000?
Yes, sir, $120,000.
So I'd be supportive of the Visit Carmel ask as well as your recommendation
On the chamber?
on the chamber.
All righty? Yes,
Um,
Carrie. No, Ms. Mayor, Councilmember Tice, if it's all right.
Thank you. I'm very much in support of what we're saying, but I want to make a couple observations, so help me know when I can make some observations.
That'd be a good time.
Now, okay, thank you. Just making sure. So first of all, I appreciate what the staff has put together and the presentation of it. Can you bring up the graph of the income? Because something's happening here that hasn't really happened before. And when you look at our income revenue for TOT, property tax, and the sales tax. So can you bring that up for me, please? The graph that you showed was really good.
Yeah, it's the password protected right now, so they'll get it up, Councilmember
But
Tice.
let's see, I can describe it. You're speaking about, Councilmember Tice,
the
are you
bar- the
speaking
bar-
about the,
The bar graph, Russell.
The bar graph.
this one here?
No,
the
the
bar
bar graph of the three revenue sources
This one right here?
over the years.
Over
Yes.
the years.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yes.
the historical
Report has
trend.
arrived.
And then we'll just need
There he
to,
is.
Sebastian, pull up the previous one. Thank you, sir.
You can just leave it open.
Well done.
This is expenditures.
Be
I'm
here in
looking for.
just 1 second, Councilman.
The challenge with the laptop is Councilmember Richards sometimes can't see over it to see the gallery and his constituents, so we'll.
Okay, right there.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So when you look at this bar graph, in years past, transient occupancy tax has always been one of the highest revenue generators, followed by sales tax and property tax. We used to have a 30% each. What's interesting about what's happened in 2020 and beyond, especially in 2021, is we're seeing that the sales tax and the property tax are bigger than TOT. And what that tells me, obviously that's a result of Measure C, which is great, but and we also have something else going on with the hotels. We're going to have 4 big hotels be out of commission next year. The Getaway and the Hideaway are going to be doing some major reconstruction. We have the Carmel Lodge that is no longer, and we also have the Colonial Terrace. So we have about 120 rooms. So we're not going to be getting any TOT from those. And I think that's probably one reason why you don't have a huge increase in TOT for this fiscal year coming up. But what this tells me here is we really need to pay attention to our retail now. Our retail segment is a huge portion of our budget. And I'm really counting on the chamber to kind of help us with that, because the wine tasting rooms, the retail segment is really exceeding our expectations right now, and of course the restaurants. So, but we're seeing that the TOT is only 22% of our revenues when it used to be 30%. So I just think we need to keep an eye on that, and we need to understand how important that retail segment is now to our revenues. And I've never seen that before, so that to me is significant. Obviously, inflation has taken a big toll on our expenditures. We have a $26 million budget, but because we are going to be putting in $5 million into capital projects, which we didn't do during COVID, that puts us over the $30 million mark. So I need people to understand we're trying to do some catch up on capital projects. I really appreciate that we're looking at residential vehicles. I think that's a good, especially in 1 square mile. I think that is really a good step toward those vehicles are less costly when it comes to maintenance. So since we're only 1 square mile, buzzing around in those little vehicles, I think it's a good idea. So I appreciate that. So I think the other chart that we need to pay attention to, and it's in the budget, is the chart on page 72, where we have a 5-year budget CIP fiscal forecast. And if we actually do everything that we are trying to do in terms of capital expenditures, we're going to run out of general fund reserves in when? 2025?
Yeah, fund balance, Councilmember.
Fund balance. So that to me means we need to look at another revenue source. So even though we have a $26 million budget, I know that's a lot, we're still trying to catch up with our capital improvements, and we need to look at another revenue source to continue with those capital improvements because we have so many buildings, streets, parks, beaches, and climate change issues that we need to take a look at. So I think that table 3 in the budget book is another good table that people need to look at. Thank you.
Carrie Wolf said, I've said it before, I know we're going to miss Robin, but I'm going to miss your business expertise and acumen on the council. You really bring a very astute mind here when it comes to the issues as it affects the economy of the city, but you do it as a business person with the betterness of the community at heart. So thank you very much. Any other comments or questions, directions?
Well, I thought we were going to be talking about the 3 asks.
Yep, we already took two of them.
The 3, isn't there 3?
Yeah, well, there was the chamber, the visitors.
Visit Carmel and
Visit Carmel.
CCVB.
And the CVB, yeah.
So there's 3 asks on
Right.
the table. And I spoke to one, the chamber, and I'd be happy to speak to the others, but I didn't know if you wanted to stay on track with each item or all 3 of them.
On 2, I don't think we discussed the VCB one.
Yeah, so, because I have my opinion on the CVBs, I'm thrilled with what we've done with them over the past 5 years. When I came on council, they were not I don't think they were doing very much for us. I think that they've turned around and they've been constantly tooling it to accommodate us, and I very much appreciate the tourism management, which I like to say, because I think they're bringing people in at the right time for the right amount of time, so that we have those overnight guests that are 3 nights, 4 nights. They're coming in on airplanes, which we can't. It's hard for us to market. City of Carmel is hard for us to market or expose ourselves to that special fly market, and not somebody that's coming in on a car, but somebody that's flying here from San Diego, from Seattle, from Denver. These are important markets for us, and it's very difficult for us to get to those markets without the CVB and without Visit Carmel. Mm-hmm. So the rate of return, and I don't mean just revenue return, I mean sustainability of these tours, of the visitors coming in on the off season, during the week, for extended amount of time, without a car. These things are really important to me. And so that's why I would absolutely be behind funding these. The chamber's a little bit different. I think the chamber, they recognize the smaller businesses, and they're a little bit more intimate with us. But the Visit Carmel, they get their dollars, and the bulk of their dollars from restaurants or hotels. And their goal is to get people into the restaurants and into the hotel rooms. But with our contribution of the $120,000, that also drives them to get into the retail, to the galleries, to the jewelry stores. It helps with these things. So for those reasons, I would support all 3 of these asks. And I'll turn it over to you after that, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Any other questions or comments? I'd concur with that comment. I think Rob's commitment today was very sincere. I happen to have spent quite a bit of time with him lately, understanding the dynamics of Monterey County, what they're doing for visitors countywide, and their outreach into the ag community, trying to bring ag and Haas Peninsula together has been a real challenge, but I think he's doing an excellent job. So for that reason, I'm very impressed with what I heard tonight and what I've seen in the past, so I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Karen?
I can't get my
It might be on.
here. Oh, there it is. Yes, I was actually quite interested in the comments coming from Visit Carmel and MCCVB. I recently traveled through Croatia, who spent many years trying to build up their tourist trade, and now some of the cities are actually trying to ratchet back just a little bit and concentrate more on the visitor experience. And I think what I heard tonight is that you do want to provide a quality visitor experience, and I think it goes hand in hand with also respecting the residents and the residential experience and how they can, that can be impacted by the I don't want to say the wrong kind of visitor, but the day tripper who doesn't spend the time or energy to be here overnight, sometimes just comes in and uses and goes. And so I like the idea that you're concentrating on the person who comes and stays. Several cities throughout the world now are contemplating day use fees for people who come in just for the day, because they really do value the visitor that takes the time to spend a few days. So thank you for those comments that you made. I found them very sincere tonight.
Good.
And I will also say that the catalyst for the chamber this year, the last 2 years, was absolutely invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
More great information for all of us, residents and business people alike. So I did appreciate that very much.
Karen, I appreciate your comments about Croatia. I haven't been there myself many a time. They were addicted to the port fees that they were getting by having cruise boats come in. Your average cruiser comes in, spends 4 hours and $18. They're like cattle descending on your community. But to wean yourself off that massive amount of money and realizing that it was the quality of the visit and the actual quality of the individuals that was visiting that made this experience better for both the public and for the visitors, I think made a big point. So I'm really glad you enjoyed that. Thank you for those comments. Anybody else? Jeff?
Yeah, first a question for Chip. So thank you both of you and Chip and staff for the great presentation and all the work that you've done in putting the budget together. I really appreciate it. On a number of the CIP, I wanted to confirm something. On a number of the CIP projects, it says a project manager is needed to implement this project. And I know I've asked you this in the past, but I want to make sure that the staffing that you have provided in the position count is adequate to address both the projects in the CIP and the strategic priorities. And I believe that's correct,
Yes, sir, that is correct. The way we've built it, that is correct. I could get into a lot more detail, but the answer is yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I'm generally happy with the budget, and I think that it addresses, I realize that the Climate Change Committee has been doing a lot of work, and I think that the budget starts to address some of the issues that we have raised. There's the beach sand, the geological survey, which we didn't have the money for last year, and I'm grateful that we're going to be doing that. And getting moving, for example, on the drainage system, this really sexy drainage system, which is really important for everybody, so that their houses don't flood, and all those things. So that's all great. A couple of other concerns, I'm not quite sure what to do about them. We have a risk of wildfire here, and it just doesn't seem like we are really making progress on sort of understanding and addressing that risk. And I know the Climate Change Committee calls it out quite a bit, and I know that there was some work done in the Mission Trail Preserve with a grant last year, $40,000 or $50,000 worth of work. But it seems like the city is sort of missing a plan. And when I was looking back at the, in the budget, the budget document itself, where it talks about the tasks of public works. I'm sorry, I don't have it right here. When it talks about the priorities of public works, what's missing there is sort of an addressing the fire problem. Like it's not addressed, there's not a bullet item in the direction in public works that says public works is responsible for managing the fire risk inside the city. And I think if we started with managing that risk, if we elevated it to the point of putting it in this document, you know, maybe we could sort of accelerate a little bit either into this, maybe into this year, you know, when we get this natural resources manager on board, we could start working our way towards figuring out what the city should do. You know, we've had a number of conversations about it. It's a really complicated problem. You know, we're really unique where we sit on the ocean, so we don't have these high temperature fires, but we have, you know, constant breezes, especially in the fall, the spring and the fall from the ocean, and it's hard to know what to do. So I don't know how to fix that, but I know we have the talent here to at least figure out how to fix it or hire someone who knows how to fix it. And maybe we could sort of tee that up, you know, as part of the work plan for Public Works over the next year. We could sort of tee that up and really make a good effort to get that done. And then, you know, I think Karen has remarked on this in the past, you know, that we've spent a lot of money taking down dead trees. We've seen all the trees coming down. We've seen all the pruning efforts going on in downtown. But the thing that's missing is planting new trees. And it's just like, for some reason, it's just, and I think there was a question about that in the budget. And that also seems to be missing. And that's something else that's also missing from Public Works. You know, it's sort of maintaining the health of the forest. Like, that's that department's responsibility. And I think that, you know, climate change is a big issue. You know, we don't really know what we're doing. I know the forest management plan is, you know, is on deck to be revised. But we really need to figure this out and get started, because if we don't start planting these, if we don't start managing the forest now, in 30 years, all the pine trees will be gone. All the old pine trees will be gone because they were all planted at the same time 100 years ago, and will be bereft of trees, and we really need to not. So I think that those are two bullet items that I would ask be put into the Public Works Public Works part of the document.
And if I may, Mr. Byrne, I have the answers for all those, but rather than take the time tonight, I will work with Mr. Harari, and we'll add those as questions. We'll pose them as questions, and then we'll address them, because, you know, like you said, the forest management plan, the wildfire risk assessment, the natural resources manager, the other positions that we're adding in the forestry function of Public Works are going to help address those items.
Yeah, I think what I'm asking for is just a much higher level of visibility for the natural environment. You know, we talk a lot about our capital projects. We're spending $5 million on capital projects, half of it on a new, you know, not half of it, you know, this year, a third of it on the new police station, and yada, yada, yada. And yet we're surrounded by this natural environment, which often seems to get, you know, the extent that we think about it is cutting down dead trees. That's the thing we always hear about, cutting down dead trees. And I would like to see that elevated.
Yes, sir.
Dale has a point. I think he had a point with the scenic pathway. You know, we really need to sort of figure that out. You know, we just need to figure that out. But those are my comments. Thank you, all three of you, for coming to visit, taking the time out of your day and coming to visit and ask in person, and for Dale for speaking to us. So
Jeff, I certainly have no objection to anything that you mentioned. Actually, most appropriate, you know, especially in the fire world. I mean, we're certainly not configured exactly the same as Paradise or Eureka or Santa Rosa, but we do have a high risk. I think that's a very important feature you bring up. So I appreciate that.
Yes, I'd like to comment on that as well. I think those comments you made, Jeff, are right on, and particularly in Mission Trail Nature Preserve, the majority of the fire fuel abatement removal has been done by a private nonprofit support group of the city in collaboration with the city. But I think a line item in the budget for invasive removal and fire fuel abatement is helpful to the public to understand what's being done in there and in Pescadero Canyon and so forth. And the beautification of this village cannot be underestimated, how that impacts the visitor experience and the residential experience. And I saw, what, a little $25,000 or something for beautification. And when you look at several $100,000 for marketing and you put just a little bit for beautification, it sort of sticks in my craw a little bit, because I think every penny that we spend making this village beautiful and sustainable pays back numerous times. And so I'd like to see more attention. I was also disappointed with the question that was asked, did the paving projects include any new trees? And the answer was just a flat out no. And I believe that every time we do a paving project, it is an opportunity to look to how we can enhance the forest while we're doing it, do traffic calming while we're doing it. It should be part and parcel to every paving project we do in this city, is a look at the landscape and what exists and how it can be enhanced when we're doing that project. Thank you.
Good points. All right, so any other discussion or directions? I think those comments are most appropriate you just made.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot one thing.
No problem.
If I may. We had a lot of discussion, and again, I couldn't find this in this report. We had a lot of discussion, or some discussion, about the bike lane up Ocean Avenue. And there was a comment in one of the documents that, well, if we couldn't figure out the bike lane, that we would just spend this money on a different part of San Carlos, I think, and no offense, I think it was up near Carrie's Hotel. But that sounded a little wishy-washy to me, and I would like it to be a priority to, figure out how to get that bike lane and sort of the larger, and here I am calling it a bike lane, and I constantly ask you to call it pedestrian friendliness as well, because Ocean is extraordinarily dangerous, at least where I live, trying to cross Ocean west of downtown. But another bullet item for Public Works would be to improve the pedestrian and bicycle safety around town, and to sort of be responsible for that. Someone in town needs to be responsible for making Carmel a better place to live and a better place to work. Someone said to me the other day that one of the things that would make it easier for families to be here, assuming they can afford the house price, would be to just make life a little bit less stressful. And, we see that with respect to addresses, we see that with respect to the danger of crossing Ocean Avenue, where I live. We see that with cars speeding down 4th Avenue. And it feels a little bit like we're starting to get a little stressed in our sort of daily existence here. And it would be nice to be able to reduce that a little bit with an emphasis on sort of, especially pedestrian safety, since most everybody around here walks rather than rides bikes. So I would just ask for that too. Thank you, Dave.
I have one other comment about Vista Lobos.
It's on.
Oh, yes, it's my understanding, and maybe you can come back with information for us, because I like to deal from reality from the beginning, and Dale made some comments about design and Vista Lobos being a valuable property and so on and so forth. It's my understanding that there is a view corridor that is protected at Vista Lobos, and that there's also parking, in-loop parking that was created with in-loop parking fees up there. So I'd just like a little bit more information about some of the good things, some of the restrictions at Vista Lobos that might influence how that property is used and so on, so that we deal from reality.
You understand that there's a view shed over our property?
Yes, there's a
Okay.
protected view shed on part of the Vista Lobos property from some of those homes. It's
Okay.
my understanding.
All right, we will, this is I took, as usual, impeccable notes, council, so,
Copious.
we'll-
I've looked at them. They're not exactly impeccable, but they are copious.
Thank you.
Very easy to read.
See that?
yes, ma'am, we'll research that for the 7th.
Well, is there any other direction we'd like to give tonight? I just comment that this will be my 28th budget I've done as an elected official. And I want to say that if you told me last year that we would be where we are this year, I would have said you were one of my cannabis clients and perhaps had been enjoying a little bit too much of your own product. Because for us to be looking at replacing the lost personnel, we actually cut 18 positions. I think we laid off 4 people personally, laid off. The most difficult budget I'd ever been through. my entire career. And to be here now, going able to rebuild, have consensus on what we can fund and augment, I think is a wonderful place to be. So it speaks very well to the stewardship that this council and this administration has provided as far as protecting the citizens, making sure we do the right thing for the community. So I want to thank staff, thank the public for their input, and thank everybody for the patience as we went through one of the toughest periods in the history of this country. Thank you all very much. We will return then on June 7th, is it, for final adoption?
Yes, sir, we will, and I will be contacting you to see if we can potentially schedule a closed session for labor negotiations next week. It should be about an hour with two of our two remaining groups, but I'll get in touch with you. But yes, sir, we're going to return to adopt the budget on Tuesday, June 7th at 4:30 p.m.
Thank you. Thank you all. Carrie?
I didn't catch what date was the closed
Oh, yeah.
I haven't said it yet. I'll be in contact with you to check on your availability prior to our council meeting in June.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you all very much. Much appreciated. We stand adjourned.